Here I am, sitting on the northern border of California, next to Oregon, making a video today for Warren, Michigan. My family owned a big portion of Warren, Michigan. It was our homestead there from downtown Detroit to 8, 9, 10 mile by Qualman Eggs. And back when the Beatles sang, "I am the egg man," I was living at the Qualman Egg Farm on 10 Mile in Warren, Michigan, with one of the guys running Fort Knox during Vietnam. So my family had a lot to do with Warren, Michigan. The tank plant and the Chevy dealers are built on my family's properties, which were taken from my family for $35 and then $75 in back taxes, while my dad and his brothers were fighting Hitler over in Europe and Japan over in the West Pacific. They came home and their farm was gone, taken for $35 in taxes. And this is who your country really is. The tank arsenal is built on my family's farm in Centerline, Michigan. My uncle Anthony, he was Henry Ford's caretaker at his Dearborn mansion most of his life. He lived on Henry Street next to the tank arsenal, which was his family's farm when he was a kid. And he married Susan. And Kennedy sent Tony and Sue, his wife, one of the first Susan B. Anthony coins he minted, and then he was murdered a week later. And I was going to school with Camille Sirhan at that time, kindergarten class. 7 years prior to that, I was in kindergarten 4, and they planned Kennedy's murder in colleges. And I don't think it, I know it. Before he was even president, it was planned out by civil servants and people from Switzerland and people like Joe Biden, who are the payola king nowadays through the Swiss banks in China. Obama in Chicago. During Obama's administration, I had Terry Heath, Sarah Heath Palin's family was murdered on my ranch, the Manning Ranch, as they gave you Bradley Manning to confuse the JFK archives even further. And I'm the Baker family. Mrs. Baker was Mrs. Gardner's mother, and I'm the Gardner family. And Gardner was married to Mickey Rooney and Frank Sinatra. And then I have a cousin named Bugsy who created Vegas way, way before I was born. And I'm not a liar, and this isn't a pipe dream. None of you people back there in Warren admit I exist or even know I existed, because you all stole our property so you could put up the tech center and the Abrams tank plant and Rinky Chevrolet. And when I was a kid there, I used to pick up Mr. Hamilton and Grant and Lincoln. I went to school with all of these people, Lincoln, Grant, Morgan, Chase. They're my cousins, right there in Warren, Michigan. And all of you, you all stole from me as I grew up. Every single one of you stole from me. And I'm making this video to show you how. I don't think all of you did it on purpose, but a select few of you did, who are making movies in Hollywood. So this video is for my teachers, my alumni. I was a teacher in Warren Consolidated at the age of 15 with Jim Thorpe, Jim Garrison, Mr. Del Towers, Mr. Shalinsky, and every teacher you know at Warren High, Mr. Worth. And the Gardner family, my family, they run the Motley Fool at Mott High School, the Motley Fool. That gives you trending business advice. As my trademark was stolen by the alumni at Warren High. I created the word bottom line in the 60s. There's no lie in this. My neighbor with Jim Nagy and Fletcher Knebbel. Nagy is Nagy Cement in Utica, next door to the house where I lived with my wife. And I used to kick Nagy out of my house because he would drug women at parties and steal their purse with a guy by the name of Warren Danielson. And they got the drugs from Henry Bouguet and Bucky Larson off the back of my ranch. They rented farm hand houses off the back of my ranch at 23 Mile and M53, where I was raising my children as a single father. When I stopped that drug trade, I went to jail for a year. They let drug dealers off with never going to jail, and it turned out to be Kiki Camarino and Robert Tosh Pumley illegally running guns and drugs for the Senate. And every senator on earth knew me. This is bottom line. And this is for history. And everyone who knew me in Warren, Michigan, this is my stolen trademark. Weiner and Associates, I hired them in 1963 while I was playing music with John Kane at Warren High School on Telegraph Road with Del Towers and John Kane. And then Gary Shunk took his place, and Gary Shunk became a professor of music in Michigan State or Central, I forget which. But this was a trademark I created with Weiner and Associates, who took the trademark to New York, ran with it, and turned all the Greg Gardners into bottom line bars all over the globe. And this is the biggest theft in the history of this country. This is Obama's red line in the sand, making fun of me as his White House murdered Cherry Heath, Sarah Palin's family, who was my fiance, on the Manning Ranch. She had been kidnapped by 2 off-duty policemen who drove her across 3 state lines. And then I bought her the ranch, moved her onto it to protect her. And then I found her murdered, hung in her dog's leash 6 months later. And these 2 policemen had kidnapped her out of her Head Start and CPS offices in Wisconsin and illegally drove her across 3 state lines. She called me and asked me for help. And this is the girl that started Ronald Reagan's Head Start program. She was his role model at Head Start, and she helped create the program back in the 60s, before Reagan was president. And she was born in Northern California, where I am now. Her family had a farm here. So this is my stolen trademark, bottom line. And this is Fletcher Knebbel. This is John F. Kennedy's press secretary in the White House. And he wrote 15 books and made the movie 7 Days in May. And then the last book before he died with my neighbor, the Nagy family, he wrote this book, Bottom Line. They helped steal my trademark on purpose, pointing me out and letting you know I'm the truth of Kennedy. But everybody's too naive, self-centered, or busy stealing from me to admit the truth. Fletcher Knebbel, Nagy made the cover. There's a picture of him on the back. Anybody can buy this book or go read it in the library. Kennedy, in his last speeches, he was starting his speeches off saying, "To you Tribune publishers," and I was on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. And I'm a publisher at ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, and this is a membership directory, and I'm in it. I'm a composer, a writer, and a publisher all the way back to the 60s. And then I was in local 5, helping to run the Musicians Union in Local 5 back then. This is National Public Television Agreement, American Federation of Musicians. This is the contract. And for those of you who don't know that, the AFL-CIO and the Teamsters, they get all their contracts from my union, the Musicians Union. The Musicians Union is the oldest union on earth. In Detroit, it's Local 5. I belonged to it all my life. I'm 67 years old. I was born July 4th, 1953. This is Valentino at Ruby Ridge. You can see the trees in the area. He lives a block away from me now. And the FBI hired him. He was a wrestler using my stolen trademark, Bottomline, for Bottomline events with entertainment lawyers who stole my trademark and put up the Bottomline clubs all over the globe. And all of this started in Detroit with the Detroit News. And as I stated when I started this video, my high school, the people who ran, financed my high school and my public school system stole my trademark before I was 15 years old, as I taught in Warren with Jim Garrison and owned the Manning Ranch, where my wives were murdered. And Jim Garrison and Mr. Manning co-created the JFK archives as they stole my trademark. And none of this is coincidence. This is the real history they're not telling you. And I've had 2 fiancés and 2 wives, 4 women in my life married to me, are about to marry me, murdered as I lived on the Manning Ranch over a 40-year period. After the family I'm about to show you helped Webster steal my trademark with Weiner and Associates and Stanley Sandowski and Alan Pepper. Alan Akers in Warren, Michigan was supposed to be protecting me because people had tried to murder me at St. Anne's and Warren High. When I was 14, they drugged me and left me dead in a bathtub, stole my car, used my car to steal an airplane to pick up illegal drugs being shipped to them. And that was the gun trade that Robert Tosh and Kiki Camarino were running for the senators. And there's no lie in all the senators knowing me. And there's no lie in me about owning Bottomline. On 9/11, George Bush blamed this guy here playing drums for Nasty right here, Ronnie. He blamed the Fast Forward video store owner for stealing, for paying Muslims. There's Ronnie. And they had a band called Nasty in Warren, Michigan, and I was trying to publish them with David Fitzgerald. This is Brian Ford. And 20 years prior to this, when Nixon was thrown out of office because of Watergate with Spiro Agnew, you got President Gerald Ford. That's not his family. That's not the Ford family. Gerald Ford's real name was Gardner and King, and that's my family. He used the Ford name to be your president when he replaced Nixon and Spiro Agnew. Bush blamed this guy, Ronnie, who's from Saddam Hussein's country, and his father's also a policeman like L. Brooks Patterson. He said that the people who own the video stores, and his family owned the video stores, he said they paid 12 non-existent Muslims money to my other friend Deborah Voss in the Keys in Florida to have the Voss family train them to fly planes into the Twin Towers. on 9/11. And he said this after saying my name while my Uncle Mills recorded him in a Florida kindergarten. My girlfriend put Mr. Bush in on 9/11. And this is the truth. And then this is my own father in Warren, Michigan, Hubert, and I'm Hubert. This is my cousin Claire Rose. He piloted the Enterprise during Vietnam. And this is my mother. And we're on one of my family's farms. And my family always owned huge farms in Michigan. And my uncle Jesus, he made all the Mexican food all across the country. And he was doing that before I was born. My mother is the Harris family, the real Harris family. Right here, Mrs. Harris and her sisters, Christy and Gardner and Fuller and Harris. That name's being stolen right now by another entertainment attorney, Emhoff, Mr. and Mrs. Emhoff, entertainment attorneys in California. And I'm going to switch to a shared screen and show my fellow alumni at Warren High School exactly what was going on when I went to Warren High. And now this should be recording the screen, and it goes to Lori Peters. And Lori Peters, her real name is Patricia Peterson. And she was born here July 2nd, 1943. She's 77 years old right now. And if you remember, Peterson helped run Warren High School. Now, she played the role of Leslie Von Trapp on Broadway in the production of The Sound of Music. She received a Tony Award, and there's my family Tony with Kennedy and Susan King with Kennedy, Susan B. Anthony. She was an actress, dancer, singer, a drama tutor, and an author from 59 to 73, and her spouse is John Voight. Now, we're talking about in 1959, this movie here, Sound of Music. Well, this family was running Warren High. Here's Mary Martin. Mary Martin, the Martin family lived across the street from me, and I live with the Martin family right now. They're my cousins. You have Peter Pan, and then you have my cousin Robin Williams play Peter Pan in Hollywood. And these people who gave you The Sound of Music stole my trademark with another man by the name of Webster. Webster funded Warren High, and anybody you can look in your Warren High class of Warren High yearbook and look and see who funded Warren High. It was the Webster family. And a word in the dictionary can't be a trademark. And the word bottom line wasn't in the dictionary. I researched it and made it my trademark and made it my publishing company at ASCAP before the word was ever in the dictionary, 10 years before it was in the dictionary. And Webster put the word in his dictionary after they made movies marking me in Hollywood through John Voight, the Peterson family, and hundreds of other Hollywood producers and actors marked me my entire life. And the reason they did that is because of the Gardner family. Clark Gable, the Gardner family, the Harris family. We made the first TV series on Earth. It was called Make Room for Daddy. And then I was kidnapped and raped by 5 governors in Oakland County, Michigan. And they murdered kids. They dumped one kid's body in Pennsylvania next to Daryl Hall's house. And Daryl Hall is one of the people who was there when I was kidnapped. By the Long family, the Wallace family, the Andrews family, the Osborne family, the Hall family. And these were all people in my public school system on Hoover Street in Oakland County. And they were all the families of governors. And these are the governors who murdered JFK 7 years later. The incident I'm talking about occurred in 1957 when I was 3 and 4 years old. And even on my baby pictures, George Towers and Dell Towers took my baby pictures. And on September 11th, 1953, I was 4 weeks old, 4 months old, I forget which. 4 months. I was born July 4th, 53. On September 11th, George Towers took my baby pictures. His name is on the back of my baby pictures with a 2 and a 4. And this isn't coincidence. It's because my family gave you the first TV series, and people like Admiral Byrd are my family members. I was kidnapped on the day Admiral Byrd was murdered. My father's hands were cut off by Pratt and Behringer, 2 merchant Marines who worked with him at Divco. If I go back here to Lori Peters now, she married John Voight. Now let's look at John Voight and see who he is. He's an American actor, but he's a lot more than that. He's a movie producer, 60s, 70s. And here's a list of the movies he's made and been in. Fearless Frank, Hour of the Gun, Midnight Cowboy, Out of It, Catch-22, The Revolutionary, Deliverance, The All-American Boy, Conrack, The Odessa File, End of the Game, Coming Home, The Champ, Looking to Get Out, Table for Five, Runaway Train, and on and on and on. Mission Impossible, The Rainmaker, Rosewood, Anaconda, U-Turn, and the Rosewood. I'm the Rose Family. The Beatles sang about lovely Rita, Rita Rose. Baby Geniuses, Enemy of the State, The General, Varsity Blues, A Dog of Flanders, Zoolander, Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. And then when you really look into this is Lara Croft's father. And he married Peterson, Laurie Peterson. And you're looking at the Peterson family running Warren High, stealing my trademark Bottomline, and giving you Lara Croft. And Laura's my daughter. And there's no lie in this. And I felt this video needed to be made because none of the people who went to school with me even seemed to know that this is the school they went to. This was known as Warren High. The school no longer exists. And Peterson with Webster, they funded Warren High, and they marked me in these movies after stealing my trademark Bottomline worldwide in 264 countries. And then they told you on 9/11 that a band I was publishing hired Muslims for my friend in Florida, an American family, to train how to fly 747s. This was a completely concocted story. No truth to it at all. No truth to 9/11 at all. And George Bush said my name as my Uncle Mills filmed him in the kindergarten class my girlfriend put him in Florida. I thought the good people of Warren, Michigan should know this. And you should also know that L. Brooks Patterson, the Brooks family is my family. Bobby Brooks. Bob Hope took Bobby Brooks to entertain the troops in Vietnam. On my farm, Cosmo Plotz, another teacher at Warren, had raised Bobby Brooks, my aunt's daughter. And she was married to Mr. Flayton. And the media tells you that Flayton put the astronauts on the moon, General Flayton. Well, this is my aunt and uncle. And their daughter was Bobby Brooks, but they didn't raise her. Cosmo Plotz at Warren High did, because Mr. Brooks divorced Mrs. Brooks. And Bobby ended up with Cosmo Plotz. And none of this is a lie. My trademark was stolen. Bobby Brooks is my own cousin. Bobby Brooks was helping Hank and Bucky Larson and Marcia Blanchard sell guns and drugs on the back of my farm. They weren't selling the guns. The Senate was selling the guns to Mexico and Nicaragua and wherever and getting guns in return or drugs in return and money. And when the countries didn't have enough money, they gave them drugs instead of money. And those drugs were ending up in Michigan through the back of my farm and the people I have mentioned. I stopped it. The people running it never went to jail. They put me in jail for a year. And L. Brooks Patterson had already hidden my kidnap, torture, and rape and the murder of my twin and the Oakland County kids for 20 years. I'm 20 years old. I get thrown in jail for a year because I stopped the gun and drug trade hurting and killing little kids, and I mean little, 2 to 12 years old, Verna's kids. And then you got Hey Vern in the movies from Peterson. You got Forrest Gump, and they hit me with these movies, making me look like I'm a nobody as they steal my trademark and my federal publishing license worldwide. And anybody back at Warren High, you should know that Bill LeVice, he went to school with you. He graduated when I started there and became a teacher at 15 there. Bill LeVice had just graduated, and he was Mitch Ryder in the Detroit Wheels. His bass player was my brother-in-law. Peterson and Webb, Mr. Webster, and even Eschenberg, they devised a plan to destroy me. Everyone in Warren High knows the Bottomline band played there, and we won the Battle of the Bands right there in the high school auditorium as Bottomline, with the band Badfinger playing behind us at Sherry's, Cupid's Den, the teen nightclub we played at back then. Well, Laurie Peters, there was a band with another Laurie Peters in Memphis right by Elvis Presley and anybody, the Skittleheads. And this is Oscar Tyler Moore was going to school with me and Mitch Ryder. And I would actually play on in his bass player's backyard tunes they were writing for Elvis Presley to sing in Vegas and in his movies with all the musicians and Mitch Ryder because of the Nevelt family, his bass player. Peters knew this. Peterson and Webster knew this. They stole my trademark behind Mitch Ryder and set up a fake band with their names in Memphis. On Halloween Day 2011, after 9/11, after they murdered 3 of my wives on the Manning Ranch and gave the world Bradley Manning, and all this propaganda in the news, right up to current, right now, they're giving you propaganda in the news. Graham Media runs Detroit's news, TV, and radio with the very people who kidnapped me, Barr and Osborne, in 1957. And they've hidden my truth for 7 decades of the Oakland County child killers. And these same people are the people who murdered my cousins, the Kennedy family. And those of you in Warren who knew Wayne Bouvier, that's Jackie Bouvier's family. He was a dead weight lift champion of the world. He came to all my performances as Bottomline. You could say he grew up with me until he died, along with many other people. I played in a studio with Styx. I played with John Kane. I played with the lead guitar player from Boston. But I don't exist. 4 of my wives have been murdered, and Graham Media still runs your news, hiding my truth of the Oakland County child killers and the 4 and 5 governors who raped me at the age of 4 in Oakland County on Hoover Street. They still hide me in your media, and their families are senators who are loyal to the Queen of England. And you might laugh at this, but it's truth. And you just elected the vice president of Obama, who had two of my wives murdered, dismembered and murdered in Johnson City, Tennessee, after I bought the Manning Ranch to protect her from off-duty policemen kidnapping her out of her Head Start office in Wisconsin on the other side of the Great Lakes, because the people who kidnapped me lived on the other side of the Great Lakes in Michigan. And they had boats and planes, and they were killing little kids all around me for 20 years until the FBI detained me in my office for Jimmy Hoffa's murder. And my wife, Mary Westhouse, her mother was with Jimmy Hoffa as he disappeared, and Whitey had sold me a car the night before that I had to junk because the transmission didn't work in it. The FBI detained me for that murder before they detained my neighbor in Oakland County, Chucky O'Brien. I grew up with Dr. O'Brien and Kathy O'Brien and Roseanne Barr and the Shepherd family and the Duell family on Hoover Street, Vance Street. Even the Miller family lived there, and Miller was, her throat was slit by the very same people who kidnapped me 10 years after me. And that's your Miller FBI telling you they found a spot of blood in a house I bought for Miller. Miller and Tony Tocco worked for me at a factory I rented from Jack Ruby's Trademark next to the Carousel on Groesbeck Highway, as they murdered another Kennedy and another Kennedy. And on the truth of the 5 Kennedys being murdered, and all 5 of the Kennedy family members who have been murdered were working with me as they were murdered at sessions of Congress. We were rewriting the Berne Convention in the 99th, 100th, and 101st sessions of Congress at ASCAP. And I was a publisher with the Mills family. Stanley Mills offered me $1 million contract to not become a publisher. With B.B. Bourne, Elvis Presley's publisher, and Dee Snider was there, Twisted Sister, before anybody knew who Dee Snider. We had dinner together as Mr. Mills offered me a multi-million-dollar contract through the Bourne Publishing Company not to become a publisher again, because they were busy stealing Bottomline from me. And Lori Peters, her family, and Webster helped DuPont, who ran the WWF, started it on his mother's horse ranch. And it's not coincidence that Jackie Kennedy fell off a hot horse from the DuPont farm there and died. I'm the truth of all of this. And your media in Detroit, and all of you, you think you make fun of me? And it's really, it's hysterical to me to understand, to realize those of you making fun of me are hiding the truth of who murdered your presidents, either out of ignorance or on purpose, helping Peterson and Webster steal my trademark Bottomline. My father, who was special forces in the Navy after World War II, and he was in World War II at the age of 15, on submarines as a cook and a machinist. All of my murdered wives, their fathers were in the Navy, cooks on submarines and battleships with John F. Kennedy in World War II. None of their murders even got an obituary. And their murders are unsolved to this day. I have open murder cases that the police who murdered them and looked the other way, and they're all from South Africa, like Mr. Craig, chief of police, Mr. Craig's family stole my last name Squire to give you Billy Squire from Queen after 5 governors had sex with me at 4. There's no lie in this. Before him, it was Gilbert Hill, a South African, and Coleman Young buying gold Krugerrands, as Rand Paul's grandfather was my business manager, Paul. And then David Fitzgerald became my business manager, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And through all of this, none of you helped me. That's why I left Michigan, and that's why I'll never return. My own father, before he died, and he was murdered by a young kid out of college who gave him a shot, and he was dead 5 minutes later. My own father told me, you were all jealous of me, and he was correct. And all of you have stolen $2 trillion from me. 28,000 multi-million-dollar entertainment contracts. I owned them as Bottomline Publishing at ASCAP, New York. And this is the theft that you, my American neighbors, hid on 9/11 and blamed Saddam Hussein for. After I was kidnapped on Hoover Street and Hubert Hoover made the Hoover Dam, you called Saddam Hugh sane as you destroyed my worldwide publishing company, a federal license from Foley Federal Court. And then you got the propaganda of the first man beheaded was Mr. Foley. That's where my federal publishing license came from. Foley Federal Court on Broadway in New York. Morton Gould signed it. You were all watching Stargate. Their enemy was the Gould. Oh, and I was a publisher at the Stargate. As you stole Bottomline from me, from a 15-year-old kid who was a teacher at Warren High with Mr. Garrison, Mr. Worth, Mrs. Cody, and Peterson and Webster were running the school, making movies, stealing my likeness, my name, with DuPont. And Joe Biden and Kamala Emhoff and Obama, they're all entertainment lawyers with their husbands and wives, Michelle and Mr. Emhoff. And gee, Hoffa's buried on my property in Michigan, but I'm a liar. You think Tony Toko or G.I. Akani did it. And this is all a lie. All a lie. For 7 decades now. I was arrested for Jimmy Hoffa's murder. I didn't kill him, but I know exactly where he's buried. And all of you try to tell me I'm crazy and a liar. I'm not. I'm saying truth. And it's time your police department in Warren and Oakland County told truth. In Warren, Michigan, Alan Akers, detective, was supposed to be protecting me from 2 men who kidnapped me. And he didn't protect me. I walked in and there he was having sex with my wife a week after I married her in front of my daughter. Oh, but I'm a liar. And then that wife stabbed me in the back with a butcher knife and I divorced her. 3 years later, I didn't divorce her for having sex with the Akers family. I divorced her because 3 years later, she stabbed me in the back on my way out the door to go to work to support her in her new house that she never worked. She never worked. All she ever did was have sex with my friends. Mr. Akers was supposed to be protecting me. He didn't. And this is pretty, my whole life is like this. L. Brooks Patterson. I went to high school with Oglesby. Ted Oglesby was murdered in a jail cell in his own uncle's jail. Ted didn't commit suicide. I was with Ted all day. He was very happy when I left him. Ted was my friend at Warren High. L. Brooks Patterson covered up my kidnap by the Osborne family and the Hall family. As you got Daryl Hall on TV, and he collected $20 million a year in state tax money to find the Oakland County child killers, and he already knew who they were. And he did that for 20 years, right up until he died. He hid the truth. And these are the very people who murdered the Kennedy family. And I'm living proof of this. In Macomb County, Sheriff Hackle tried to put me in a dog catcher's truck at Elaine Boudreau's house. Her little brother, Michael Boudreau, was my friend, and I and Keith Kowalski, we used to practice there. And Sheriff Hackle, a dog catcher, pulled up and tried to put our equipment and me in a dog catcher's cage in the back of his truck. I wouldn't let him. And he left there crying like a little baby from Boudreau's driveway, telling me, I'm going to get you, Squire, I'm going to get you. And gee, when I stopped the gun and drug trade, Hackle put me in a prison cell for stopping drugs that were killing little kids in Utica, Michigan on 23 Mile and M53. I got that far from Mazzara. Mazzara is Donald Trump's tax lawyers today. That's why he didn't want those forms released, because he didn't want you to know his lawyer's name, and he doesn't have any money because he borrowed money from the banks of my family members and didn't pay a penny back. He didn't have no money. He was living on money he stole from my family's banks. And I don't own the bank. I don't own Harris Bank, but I'm the Harris family. I don't own Morgan Banks, but I'm the Morgan family. I don't own Chase Morgan, but I'm the Chase and Morgan family. These are the banks that Donald Trump borrowed money from and never paid back. I voted for Donald Trump simply because he didn't murder my wives. That was Obama's government, and Obama isn't even an American. He came from my cousin, the Queen, and her possession of Kenya. Just like Miss Emhoff, she calls herself Miss Harris because my family created the Harris Steam Thrashers, and my family are Harris Banks. And my family was with Lincoln as Booth shot him at Ford Theater, and my family ran Ford. And Gerald Ford is my family. That's the real Harris family. And now you have the people who murdered my family members. You just put them in the White House again. And they're not even Americans. I'm ashamed to say I'm an American anymore. And I mean this. The people on your money, Lincoln and Jackson, Hamilton and Warren, Michigan, these are my family members. They're my family members. And people like Alex Jones and Jesse Ventura and Julian Assange and the Snow family, a porno family and a pedophile, and a guy who made all his money at my stolen trademark Bottomline events after it was stolen by Webster and Peterson and DuPont. He tells you he wants the truth of Hoffa and Kennedy, but he won't interview me. And then he comes after living in Mexico for 35 years next door to property I own there in Baja, California. He wants to be your president with the Green Party from Switzerland, Swiss banks where they hide their money, so payola money, so they don't have to pay taxes. He wants to be your president after lying to all of you on a TV show. And then you made a pedophile, Julian Assange. He ran away from his rape case, and you made him your truther. America, you deserve to be fooled. You did all this, and now you put the people who murdered my wife and stole my trademark in the White House again. And Thomas Jefferson is my ancestor. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. And boy, you're in for a whole lot of trouble now. And that's all I had to say tonight. Sheriff Hackle covered up the murder of Judge Hunter D. Stair. So my cousin from London could send her band over and sing and she's buying a stairway to heaven to you on your radio after knighting Mick Jagger for telling you he murdered the Kennedys with me. And I'm a Kennedy family member. Uh, uh, Good luck with your future. And you just sold your own grandchildren down the drain with Biden and Harris. She's not my family. Good night. I'm going to end this here. I hope that was understandable for those of you who never seem to understand anything I say. I really hope that was understandable. I won't come back to Michigan unless they file charges against Osborne, Hall, Long, Hank Bouguet, Bucky Larson, Bobby Brooks, L. Brooks Patterson, and Sheriff Hackle. On the day they do that and start telling truth and get somebody else running your media other than Senator Graham, I might stop back there. I stopped back there in 2016, 2017 to talk to L. Brooks Patterson one more time. He wouldn't talk to me, and they gave you the lie of Dr. Nasser. Little girls, a doctor looked at their private parts because they were athletes. Oh, in my lifetime on Tartar Fields at MSU, they murdered little kids and threw their murdered bodies on my properties, but they won't talk about that. Bye.